This program is brought to you in part by Cedar Ridge Paving and Milling, commercial and residential work. Yes, welcome to Race in Action Today. We're here today with very special guests as a follow-on to the recent show we did about real estate. Now we're going to get into a little different part of real estate, which involves an attorney. And tonight's special guest is going to be our local attorney from New Britain, Emanuel Mangiafico, who is a good friend of mine. And I have to say, Manny, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight. And I want to start out, how did you ever get involved being an attorney? When you were a little kid, did you say, I want to be an attorney? Or how did this all start?
Well, thank you for having me tonight, Larry. I appreciate the opportunity to come and spend some time with you.
Yep.
You know, we used to spend time together all the time when you were in the office, having our cappuccinos every day. And, you know, now we see each other once in a while and at Christmas parties. And, and I'm glad to be here spending a little time with you. So how did I become an attorney? So the short story is, when I was a kid, my mother said, you need to be an attorney.
Really?
She did, and it just always stuck in my mind. So when I went to college, I went to UConn, I studied accounting, but I always had in the back of my mind, I'm gonna go to law school. And so I followed through with that.
Now, let me ask you a question. When you were in high school, did you have to take certain courses to go that direction, or no?
No, I didn't have to take any special courses in high school, just a regular curriculum.
So now what happens? Now you're at high school, you go to college. Where'd you go now?
I went to UConn, University of Connecticut.
Okay. As an accountant, though?
As an accountant.
It was like a math major or something, right?
An accounting major, but a lot of numbers.
So then what happened?
And then I went right to law school after that.
Then you went to law school. How long? Now, you went to UConn X amount of years. I don't know.
4 years.
Okay. Now, what about law school?
3 years. Also at UConn, at the University of Connecticut.
7 years. You went to college.
7 years of school. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my dear. And Mama and Papa were taking care of this, or what was going on there?
So I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
And being in the Air Force, I had the GI Bill. So they took care of UConn and the law school as well.
And law school.
Right.
Okay, so now you went to law school.
Right.
Now, when you get out of law school or when you graduate, do you have to serve an internship somewhere or no?
Not as a lawyer. You just have to take the bar, pass the bar, and then get sworn in, and you can start practicing law.
So right off the bat, you have to take the bar. And then pass. You have to pass.
That's right.
And then you get like a license?
Yeah, you are admitted to the bar, the Connecticut Bar Association.
Okay.
And that authorizes you to practice law in the state.
And then from there, did you work for another attorney office?
I did not.
You started your own business?
Right off the bat, I started my own business.
Oh, wow. Was that a big undertaking?
It was a big undertaking.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything, didn't know what to do, but I opened up and I figured I'd find a way to get clients and make business.
Yeah, well, you know, we were all in the same boat in reality.
Yeah.
You know, of course, I was in real estate for a number of years, and I have to tell you, Manny, every time you represented a client of mine, things always went smooth, you know. That's a plus for you. And
Thank you.
I want people to know that.
Thank you, Larry.
That you're a good attorney.
Thank you.
And but now we're going to get into nuts and bolts about what I was talking about, the real estate transactions. Now, when a person is going to buy a house, like naturally, they come to a realtor usually, and they start talking in the real estate. They have a presentation they give the people, and then they talk about, you know, what's going to happen. Now, when it comes to during this process, and they say, well, you're going to need an attorney. usually, Manny, do they like go to you to ask you help in this thing, or how does this work? Because when you're a realtor, you need a signature saying you're going to represent them. Do they have to do that with you too?
They do. So if a client calls my office and asks me if I'll help them in a transaction, we get all their information. We send them a retainer agreement that outlines what the work that it is we're going to do, what the price to do the work is going to be, and that will authorize us to begin working for them.
Okay, now when they start looking at houses, and you know, they like some or they don't, do they confer with you at all during that process, or no?
Every client is different.
Okay.
Some do, and some wait until they have a contract signed, and then they start looking for an attorney.
Now, when they get a contract by the realtor, do they usually give it to you to look at first before they sign it?
Some do, some don't.
But in reality, would that be a good thing to do?
It would be a good thing to have the attorney look at it before it's signed and submitted.
Before it's signed, okay. So now we get it signed, right? You're representing the people, and of course, they do inspections, right? And after inspections, most of the time, it's worked out negotiation-wise. Now, do you ever run into legal affairs with an inspection?
Well, the legal affairs are you have the inspection date, and you have to complete your inspection and request the repairs before the inspection date passes.
Passes, that's right.
So if that happens and you're not satisfied with the inspection, and the realtors can't negotiate an agreement for what the buyer wants fixed, what the seller's willing to fix, then they would have to terminate the contract.
Okay.
And sometimes they'll come ask my advice on should they terminate, or is there anything else we can do?
Or do you ever, like in a situation like that, does your client who's buying the house go back to them and offer them like a happy medium or something, or how does that work?
A lot of times you have your wish list. So you do an inspection and there's 10 things on the list.
Okay.
You ask the seller to repair all 10, and the seller may say, well, I'll repair 5 of them or 6 of them. So it's a negotiation.
Okay, but once they agree, right? Once they agree that it's fine, is there things that have to be signed then, or no?
Yeah, they sign the inspection agreement,
Okay,
which is memorializing what the agreement is.
And saying they accept that condition.
Correct.
Okay, so now that's done. Now the mortgage is involved, right? They have to get a mortgage. They're waiting for a commitment.
Right.
Now, what happens then? Are you involved in that at all?
Sometimes we're involved. A lot of times the realtors will handle that. But let's say the mortgage commitment date is coming up and the buyer hasn't gotten their mortgage yet.
Okay.
Then the realtor, or if the realtor hasn't done it, my office will request an extension of that mortgage date.
To give them more time to get the mortgage consummated, right?
Correct.
It's in underwriting and needs to be committed, right?
Correct.
You need a solid commitment.
The bank, it's basically the bank needs to approve the loan at that point. So the buyer knows once they go past that mortgage commitment date, they have a mortgage and they can close, or they can lose their deposit.
Okay, now the other question, when they're in this process, Manny, they're waiting for a commitment or they got their commitment, when does the appraisal get involved? I mean, does the bank require that appraisal to get the commitment?
Yes.
So you must meet the appraisal, to consummate the mortgage, right?
So the house that's being purchased needs to appraise for the value of the contract, or the bank will not approve the loan.
Okay, so, and then of course, once the commitment is made, I'm sure there must be a signature needed there somewhere. that they're accepting the mortgage, right?
So the bank would send the mortgage commitment to the buyer, and the buyer would accept the terms of that mortgage commitment.
All right, so now once those things are satisfied, inspection, commitment for the mortgage, now we got to talk about a closing date. Is that correct?
Correct. At that point, we can start talking about scheduling the closing.
Okay, then you schedule a closing. Now, is there a certain time you wait to close or no?
It all depends on the bank. The bank is going to run the show, meaning once the mortgage is approved and there's a clear to close, so there's no outstanding conditions, then the bank would call my office and say, we are clear to close, you can go ahead and schedule.
Okay, now, when you have the clear to close, is there something you have to do prior to the closing as far as checking for a title or any of this business?
That all happens before the mortgage commitment date,
Okay.
because one of the conditions the bank has is to verify the title to the property. So that's looking at the town hall in the town clerk's office. We order a search.
Now, who takes care of that? Just so the viewers know, who takes care of that process?
The attorney's office does.
Okay, so you have like a paralegal?
I have 4 paralegals, but one of them working on the file would order the title search. It would come in. I would review it, or one of the other attorneys would review it to make sure that there's nothing that needs to be taken care of by the seller, and that we could proceed to the closing.
Now, I've been involved in some instances like where FHA had certain things that had to be done, and a VA, let's say a VA loan. Is there a certain special thing you have to do to get that squared away?
Well, a VA loan is always a little bit different, and what that means, it's a veteran program. You have to be a veteran to qualify for the VA loan, and then they have their own underwriting guidelines.
Okay.
One of which is a termite inspection, for instance.
Yeah.
So on every VA loan, the bank is required to do a termite inspection, and there has to be a treatment of termites before the closing.
And I thought there was other things. They inspect the house themselves.
Well, both FHA and VA, their appraisal guidelines, they go through, they look at the roof, they make sure there's handrails, they make sure there's no peeling paint.
Yep.
And those are all guidelines that the appraiser, while he's out there, has to look at.
Okay, so if he knows that it's that kind of a loan, he's going to do things automatically, right?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah. Because there's a lot to doing a real estate deal for a house. You know, and as we both know, I mean, there's the craziest things sometimes pop up, you know, and you have to deal with whatever is going on. Now, you've been doing this real estate for how many years, Manny?
25 years.
25 years. In all that time, have you ever seen something kind of crazy that you never thought would come up?
I've had people selling properties that they think they own, but then you find out that someone else owned it because it was never brought to the probate court, or the deed was done incorrectly and the wrong person sold the property.
Oh my dear.
Yeah.
So things could happen.
Things could happen.
Now, when you get the title search, though, that kind of assures you that the title is good.
So when you get the title search, it's either going to assure you the title is good, or that's when you're going to find out there's an issue with the title that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, yeah.
And the seller's attorney is going to be responsible for correcting the title.
You know, Manny, I have to say, in the 20-something years that I am a real estate broker, just to be transparent here, I had one client that would not get title insurance. I don't, and to this day, I don't know why.
I think that's the biggest mistake a buyer can make, not getting title insurance.
I thought it was the weirdest thing. I only had it happen once.
So let me explain what title insurance is for the viewers.
Okay.
Title insurance is an insurance policy that you buy at the closing when you purchase a home. And it ensures that you've got good title to the property. So what that means is from the day you close on that house, the title company is ensuring that you're the owner, there's no outstanding liens, there's no unpaid mortgages, and that as the owner, there's no one in the chain of title that can come back and claim that they own that house.
So it's a guarantee of just about, right?
It's a guarantee that you own that home.
Okay, and then the cost of doing this will vary or no?
The cost of doing it is based on the purchase price.
Okay.
And there's different title companies in the state of Connecticut. They all charge the same rate. You can't shop it around like you could your car insurance.
So basically they all know that the X amount of dollars is going to do this and they're going to do that, right?
Correct.
Now, when we talk about real estate transactions, I mean, there's all kind, right? That could happen. There could be a sale within a family, right? It could be.
And Larry, that's when you usually find out later on that the title isn't correct. When they start changing the ownership of the property in the family, and they give it to this guy and the brother and the cousin, and the grandparents gave an eighth of the property to somebody, and then they left off a piece. So then you find out grandpa, who passed away 30 years ago, still owns a piece of that property.
Oh my dear. So that must become interesting, is settling that case.
Well, a lot of times you got to go get the probate court involved, and you got to file probate documents and clean up the title.
Yeah, because, you know, you have to know who owns the house. Number one, that has to be a complete loan.
But if you've got the title insurance, that would cover all that and fix everything.
All right. Now, the other thing, Manny, which I think viewers should know, I've handled a couple of foreclosures, and that's another animal in itself. Am I thinking right?
Foreclosures are always a little tricky, Larry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have gone through where we literally had to wait months and months to get squared away on what's going to happen there. I don't know why, but we did.
A lot of times if you buy a foreclosed property, you'll find out that there's still somebody living there, and then you'll have to evict them. You'll have to go to the court and get an eviction against them to get them out of the house. A lot of times you'll find out there's damage in the house. Sometimes the foreclosing bank does the foreclosure incorrectly, and you got to go back to the attorney that did the foreclosure for the bank and get them to correct it.
Oh, wow. So there's a lot to it.
There is.
Do you find now, though, is there less of that foreclosure kind of thing than in the past?
I would say right now there's less people buying foreclosed property than in the past. There's less foreclosure auctions right now.
Yeah. Well, that's good, you know. The other thing that's kind of different now, too, is the interest rate changed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not cheap no more, you know. But I will say this, Manny. When I tell people in 1973, I bought a house and paid 8% interest.
Right.
They said, wow. I said, back then, that was not about, that was the normal thing.
Yeah. And in the 80s, they were paying 13 and 14% interest.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So that thing is always up and down. Now, in today's environment, Manny, I see houses are moving, but it's very odd to me. They're not cheap houses that are moving.
No.
Why is that?
So there was a phenomenon during COVID where prices on real estate skyrocketed. And I think that's because the interest rates dropped so far. Interest rates were in the 3s, in the high 2s.
Yeah.
And people were able to bid higher on these properties that were for sale, and it really drove up the prices.
So that's interesting to know. I didn't realize that was very, you know, I mean, I knew the rate was cheap. That I did know. But I didn't know it created, a little more activity. And,
well, it did. It did, because people were overbidding on a lot of homes. So if somebody had a house listed for $300,000, it might sell for $350 or $375, and that started this increase in value.
Yeah, well, I remember, man, in the day when we were busy, I had one house, had 12 offers. I literally had, I had a, what do you call a sheet with the numbers? What do you call that?
Spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet. There was 12 different people.
Right.
You know, and somebody finally stepped up and said, we'll go 10 grand more or whatever. And they got the house, you know. But that's how things go in real estate. You know, you just never know. Now, another thing that is part of real estate is renting. Now, where do you get involved in these renting? Now, I'm not talking commercial. I'm talking about residential renting.
So I don't do a lot of work on that, but I'll write a lease for some of my clients. So if they have a renter, I'll write the lease for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's always a good idea, if you're going to rent a home, to know what the lease agreement is and whether you want to ask for certain things, right?
Yes.
People don't talk about it.
Well, they don't talk about it, and you have to know the laws as well, because there's security deposit laws, there's late fee laws, there's all types of laws, and there's statutory laws that you have to follow to be in compliance. And a lot of people don't know them. They just do what they want, but then later on they find out, oh, I couldn't charge 3 months security deposit, you know, that was incorrect. Or I charged a 10% late fee, but I can't do that. I can only charge a 5% late fee.
Yeah, there's laws, you know. And now that when you talk about you know, legal affairs and everything, now do you have to do CE like a realtor? Like we have to do continuing ed. And do you have to buy your every year? Get another new license?
It's not a new license, but we have to do continuing legal education every year.
You do?
We do.
How many hours is that?
12 hours.
12. We're 12 too.
Yeah.
And then you renew your license?
No, we don't renew the license. We just file annually that we did our continuing legal education.
Okay, and then we have to do the same. We have to say that, you know, we could be audited at any time. They go by, they'll give you your license and everything, but when they want to perform an audit, you better have the paperwork to go with it.
That's right.
Which is good. There's nothing wrong with that, you know. But one thing I did learn tonight when you talked about renting, you know, that was a good idea to have somebody legal to look at what the hell's going on. Because very few people do that. That I'll tell you.
Most people go online, print a form, fill it out, and have it signed.
Have it signed.
But then if you're a landlord, you later find out that there's things in there that shouldn't have been in there.
Yeah. Well, the laws are different today in a lot of aspects, you know. And I'm sure today, when you go to be an attorney, man, to go to school today, it's probably more involved than it was back then, right?
It may be. That I don't know.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I never got involved being an attorney or what it took or whatever. That's why I was curious to have you here tonight. You know, 7 years of school, though. Wow.
7 years.
Oh, my dear. Yeah. Now, in your office, Manny, you are, of course, the head attorney. Do you have other attorneys in your office?
I do. I have another 2 attorneys in the office.
Oh, you do?
We do.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How about paralegals?
We have 4 paralegals.
Oh, my dear.
And 2 staff.
Wow, so they keep pretty busy.
They're busy. They're very busy.
I know your location in New Britain there was always my favorite area. Oddly enough, the original people that were at that house where you are there was a dentist.
That's right, Dr. DeMeo.
When I was a kid, I used to fear going in there. I'm telling you, I would fear it, you know. But it was the dentist.
That's right.
And what I miss, Manny, of course, being in Berlin now, Sal's got an office there. I miss the cappuccinos and talking with you, and you know, I miss that. I really do.
Well, Larry, you're always welcome. The door is open.
We'll have to stop by. Well, Manny, when you're having fun, time flies. We're going to have to call it a night for this show. I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you, Larry.
And I want the viewers to know that Manny is the man. As far as I'm concerned, you need an attorney, this man will take care of it. And I want to thank everybody for watching tonight. And we hope to have Manny back and talk a little bit more about this subject. We want to thank everybody, and good night.
Good night.
This program is brought to you in part by Just Results Weight Loss Center in Berlin, Connecticut.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.